What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we are going over who is going to win my final predictions of these semifinal matchups. Now, if you guys have been following us all throughout the playoffs, we have went over every round, what has transpired in every round. And through those episodes, I have basically gave my prediction on what I think the national championship is going to be in the last episode. But we wanted to make this mini pod the day of to go over my final predictions on what's going to transpire in these two games. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys. In both of these matchups, I went back and forth who I believe is going to win these matchups. It has been a very tough decision to me. Who was I going to put in the national championship? I think in both of these games, both teams match up pretty well against each other. And the four teams that we have in the college football playoffs is going to make out for a very exciting final. I think both teams, all four teams really, have a very exciting story of how they got here and have faced a lot of adversity. I want to go over the game tonight as this is the day of. First, we're going to go over Miami, Ole Miss, how both teams got there, how both teams have played in the college football playoffs. Now for Miami, Miami is a team that definitely handled a lot of adversity. Miami is a team going down to the wire when they were announcing who's going to be in the college football playoffs. We did not expect Miami to be in this college football playoffs. They have proved that they definitely deserve to be in the college football playoffs. It was a very hot topic, dumb or dumb or Notre Dame, who was going to get into the college football playoffs. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was a supporter of Notre Dame. I thought Miami was definitely a college football playoff team. I think the issue really became with those group of five teams having to get in. But again, Miami at this point definitely proved that they deserve to be here as they're in the final four teams. Within their college football playoff matchups, they kind of have won both games the same way, right in the back of their defense. They have faced two explosive offenses in Texas A&M, a super high-scoring offense that they limited in that game to 3 points. I thought that was a phenomenal defensive game, even though a lot of people don't like defensive games. That game, Miami won 10-3 with a late touchdown. And then when you look at the Ohio State game as well, they won in that game 24-14. They were ahead in that game. They had a monster pick six in that game that I believe really decided that game, really put them over the top. Ohio State did make a late push, but Miami did put a late touchdown for them to win that game 24-14. When you look at what they did with two top quarterbacks in the country, two very different quarterbacks in Marcel Reed and in Julian Sayin, I believe they really suffocated both. In the Ohio State game, put more pressure than Julian Sayin has ever been under this whole season. They had 5+ sacks in that game on him. And then when you look at the game against Texas A&M and Marcel Reed, not only were they able to cover that elite trio of receivers, they were trying to make Marcel Reed win within the pocket with a ton of pressure. Again, they rode the backs of their defense all the way through, and they have had solid quarterback play from Carson Beck. Again, him not really having to do too much, him following the game script for them, but again, not turning over the football has been the key for them on offense. They win both of those games. Then when you look on the other side with Ole Miss, completely different style of winning two football games. When we look at them against Tulane, that was a complete mismatch. They absolutely destroyed Tulane, put in 40 points on them. And then when you look at the Georgia game as well, Trinidad Chambliss, absolute legacy game. We talked about it in our last episode. Trinidad Chambliss right now, probably the hottest quarterback going in. It's hard to argue him against Fernando Mendoza again with the season he's having. But Trinidad Chambliss, again, what he's able to do outside of the pocket, he's able to really escape, make plays outside of the pocket, but also win within the pocket. Now, again, he out-edges Georgia in the second time they faced. He played really well against Tulane as well. Obviously, that was a cupcake game. Now, Miami, I believe personally, again, Ohio State definitely was their toughest task on both sides of the ball. But when you look at the quarterback they're going to have to contain in Trinidad Chambliss, when we look at Julian Sayin, a guy that's consistently able to win in the pocket, when we look at Marcel Reed, a guy that's able to win outside of the pocket, now you're facing a quarterback in Trinidad Chambliss, in my opinion, that could beat you inside the pocket as well as outside the pocket. So probably their toughest quarterback matchup for this front seven. I like Ole Miss. Again, I like the adversity they face. Again, they're probably the second best story in this college football playoffs because you're looking at an all-time story in Indiana. When you look at the losingest program in the Power Four, now arguably the best team in college football, vying for a national championship. But this Ole Miss story is just as good as well. When you look at a team trying to get to the national championship that lost their coach midseason, arguably the biggest story Lane Kiffin made himself this season. And then when you also look at Trinidad Chambliss winning the D2 national championship last year, now trying to lead this team to the national championship, phenomenal story. It could compete with Indiana, in my opinion. But my biggest thing why I believe Ole Miss is going to advance, not only does this team has an insane edge with everything they are playing with, I believe Ole Miss right now, their offense is completely high powered. When you look at Ole Miss, 8 straight games putting up 30 plus points. They put 30 plus points on Georgia twice. They put 30 plus points on Oklahoma, on multiple SEC teams down the stretch. And I think Miami is going to completely have to change their game plan to win this game. I think you're going to need to see a lot more from Carson Beck. I don't think he's going to be able to just, you know, not turn over the football and win this game. I think Ole Miss is a team that's going to be a high power offense. I get the defense, the front seven that Miami has been in this college football playoffs down the stretch, but I don't think you're going to be able to contain an SEC team like Ole Miss. Again, I do think they're going to put up 25 plus points in this matchup, and where Miami has been riding their defense, and again, Carson Beck has been playing clean football, but not able to do too much. I think Carson Beck is going to have a major game. I think Miami is going to completely have to flip the script to win this game. And I think that's a lot more to overcome than just Ole Miss playing their brand of football. I like Ole Miss in this matchup. I believe in a game where Ole Miss is going to put up 25 plus points. I'm not sure Miami is going to be able to get there. And Miami is a team right now that has been playing in front. If they're going to have to play from behind and Carson Beck is going to have to make big throws and put this team on their back, I don't know if I necessarily trust that. This game comes down to a big play. I trust Trinidad Chambliss right now a lot more than I trust Carson Beck. I'm going Ole Miss in that matchup. Now, when we look on the flip side, Indiana, Oregon, two teams right now that have been extremely hot. When we look since both teams have played each other, obviously Indiana is undefeated. Oregon hasn't lost since both teams have played each other. The first time they played each other, Indiana won that game 30-20. Both quarterbacks threw interceptions in that game, but Dante Moore made the last mistake, which led Indiana to win that game. That was an extremely tough matchup. When we look at Indiana, again, in this late route, them beating Ohio State in a low scoring game, and then them absolutely dominating Alabama. I thought they were going to dominate Alabama. I told you guys that because I thought that was just a breach of a really good college football team compared to a true national championship contender. Indiana could be a team of destiny. Right now, on both sides of the ball, they're pretty much a level above everybody going into this game. They have the Heisman quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. I believe they have three really great fast receivers. I think they have two really good running backs. I think they're great in the trenches. Obviously, right now, to a lot of people, they have the best coach in college football. Not only what he's able to do in the transfer portal, collectively bringing in this talent, but again, how he manages each game, the amount of fire that he brings in to these kids. Right now, you can't really find a fault in Indiana. Again, they have played pretty much flawless football, in my opinion, since the Penn State game. I thought the Penn State game was a little bit of a hiccup, even though they did get out of it. Penn State was completely unraveled at that point, and they let that game get down to the final seconds. But since then, Indiana has really been phenomenal. Again, a lot of people had questions in the Big Ten championship. They got past Ohio State. Again, some people had questions against Alabama. Obviously, them being as storied as a program as they are, completely dominated them. So they're going into this Oregon game as high as they could possibly go in. Now for Oregon as well, Oregon has been a team that has had to win in a lot of different ways. Again, a lot of people say they had a pretty easy schedule. I had them in the beginning of the year having one of the easiest schedules, but I do think they had to face adversity. Again, I think that Penn State game in the beginning of the season was one of the more impressive wins of any college football team this season, just because of the state Penn State was at that time and the environment you had to go in. I thought that was a pretty big win. Again, they lost to Indiana, but I thought the Iowa game was also a pretty big win with the amount of injuries they had in that game, with the receivers they were rocking with. They really had to go with their run game in the conditions, had to win in a different way. And I think right now, when you look at Oregon, the amount of different ways they've had to win, whether it's running the football with the multitude of running backs they had, or winning on the back of Dante Moore, or winning on the back of their defense. I believe Oregon could win a game in a variety of different ways. I do really like the core they have. I do like the offense. Again, right now going into the college football playoffs to this Indiana game, I love the depth they have in the pass catching. I love the Corey Moore. I like McLennan. Malik Benson has really turned it on this season. Kenyon Sadiq, I really believe, is the best tight end in football. And I believe right now, again, outside of the JMU game, they really haven't had to win on the back of Dante Moore. But I think in this game, Dante Moore is really going to have to prove the type of quarterback he is. I believe there is a lot to gain in this game as far as draft stock again too for these two quarterbacks. Right now, everybody has Fernando Mendoza penciled in as the number one pick to the Raiders. I don't see it necessarily as that. I think if Dante Moore has a big game, overtakes Fernando Mendoza, goes to the national championship, again, a lot of hypotheticals, and also has a big game in the national championship, I think he could be the number one pick for sure. I think Dante Moore athletically might be a little more gifted than Fernando Mendoza. I think as a pure passer, Dante Moore is probably the best pure passer in college football. I have made it known in this podcast, don't really love both of the quarterbacks as far as NFL terms, but again, they're definitely going to go in the top 5 of picks just based on how needy a lot of teams are drafting in that spot for a quarterback. Now getting back into the game, I'm not going to lie to you guys, it is a little bit of a homer pick. I love Dan Lanning. I love Oregon on both sides of the ball. I think Oregon, how they came off of that JMU game going into the Texas Tech game, absolutely shutting out Texas Tech on the defensive side of the ball. I thought that was extremely impressive. I don't think it was necessarily Texas Tech didn't deserve to be in the college football playoffs. I thought it was more just a flawless defensive game plan by Dan Lanning and this Oregon team. A lot of people might be saying Indiana is a team of destiny, which I could completely see. Again, the story is incredible. The amount of talent they have, how fast they are playing on both sides of the ball, no doubt. Fernando Mendoza, right now, Heisman quarterback, has a ton to prove, obviously. Both quarterbacks do. But I have said to you guys time and time again, not only is it extremely tough for a team to go 16-0, play a flawless season, I said it to you guys. I like the team that loses in the first matchup again in the second matchup. I believe when you lose in the first matchup to a team, you are looking back at that about how you played that game. You are constantly changing things, looking on how you can improve in that loss against a team. I believe when you beat a team in the first matchup, there isn't much you are looking at to change. You beat that team. I like a team. I think it's extremely tough to beat the same team twice in a college football season. Especially again, I know Indiana is the best team in college football right now. Oregon's a great team with a great coach that the talent is distributed on both sides of the ball. I think Oregon does have to play a near flawless game, though. I don't think Dante Moore can make a mistake late. I think this game is really going to come down to who gets to the quarterback more, which defense gets to the quarterback more, gets the quarterback out of place. Because when we look at both of these guys, in Fernando Mendoza and in Dante Moore, both of these guys have trouble. I guess their biggest weakness would be extending plays outside of the pocket. We know both of these guys don't have too much rushing upside. So I think the team that gets to the quarterback more is going to win this game. And I think it's going to be Oregon. I think Oregon is really going to advance in this game. I know a lot of people aren't going to like that. I know Indiana right now is the team that most people are rooting for to win the national championship just based on how great the story is. But like I said, I think it's extremely tough to not lose a game in a college football season, let alone go 16-0, and to beat the same team twice, especially a team that's as talented as Oregon is on both sides of the ball and has as good of a coach of Dan Lanning. I think it's going to be a very close game. My score prediction for this one would probably be Oregon winning 24-20. And then again, I didn't give my score prediction on the last game. I say Ole Miss 30-23. Again, both games are going to be very close. And again, I do not want to hear you guys saying I'm a square ever again. I'm taking both underdogs in these matchups. So again, for my final prediction, I have Oregon, Ole Miss, national championship. You guys know me, a little bit of homer picks for both, but I gave you my reasoning on both. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. I hope everybody enjoys this college football semifinals, what we all have been waiting for. And we are going to get out to you guys my reactions on both games as soon as possible. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and we